both insisting that they won the fight.
I did a lot of damage. All my punches were harder. And yes, I'm the winner.
Yeah, I think it really was 3-2 in my side. But judges, I think, felt a little bit like pressure because it's kind of like Mexican Independence Day. That's why they give one more to the Mexican fighter.
And the mixed martial arts community writ large erupting into conflict over who should have been given the victory. If you're new to MMA, maybe coming from another combat sport, or even new to combat sports as a whole, I'll explain how judging works in the sport. Then I'm going to quickly go through how the fight went, who actually won, and then get into the meat of the video. Because yesterday, as of the time of writing, UFC President Dana White announced that there would have to be a third fight, a trilogy, to settle the score. And while these two women have produced an excellent total 45 minutes of entertainment through their two matches against each other, I'm going to explain why a trilogy is unfair to the athletes, unfair to the division as a whole, and overall just a bad idea. I've got a lot to do here, and I don't want to make you sit through a 30-minute video, so let's just get right into it. Mixed martial arts uses a 10-point round system, which you might be familiar with if you're used to boxing or kickboxing, where the winner of a round is given 10 points and the loser is given 9 points or less. At the end of a fight, which will be 3 rounds or 5 rounds, depending on whether it's a main event, a championship fight, or it's not, those points are added up, and the winner in the eyes of the majority of judges, of 3 judges, will win the fight. An odd number of rounds and an odd number of judges ensures that draws and even decisions are as rare as possible. Most rounds are scored 10-9. Some rounds are scored 10-8. Very rarely, a round can be scored 10-10 if basically nothing happens and they just circle each other. It's only happened a handful of times in the UFC, happening last on one judge's scorecard in Paris between William Gomis and Jarno Aarons in 2022. 10-7 rounds are even rarer, only happening 4 times in UFC history. And funnily enough, featherweight Josh Emmett carries the dubious distinction of being the only fighter to be on the right and wrong ends of a 10-7 round against Felipe Arantes and Ilia Topuria, respectively. So, in our fight here, Judge Junichiro Kamijo scored the fight 48-47 to Grasso. That's 3 10-9 rounds to 2. Judge Saul D'Amato scored it 48-47 to Shevchenko. Again, 3 rounds to 2 at 10-9 each. Mike Bell scored the fight 47-47, giving 3 10-9 rounds to Shevchenko and a 10-9 and a 10-8 round to Grasso. The problem is, the round he scored 10-8, the fifth, was absolutely not a 10-8 round, and if he had correctly scored at 10-9, Shevchenko would have won the fight by split decision and have been given the belt. I'll come back to this, but that's the controversy in a nutshell. So let's go through the fight quickly, round by round, to determine the correct call. So in the first round, both women come out cautiously, measuring up each other's distances. They both hit each other with good shots in the first fight. They both know, they both got power. They both got really good striking. Typically in this first round, Shevchenko is beating Grasso to the jab, but Grasso is coming back with powerful shots that do back Shevchenko up. The Bullet throws a few good body kicks, which are partially blocked by Grasso until she switches stances to take that weapon away. It's a largely even round, although near the end, Shevchenko seals it for herself with a takedown that doesn't really lead anywhere due to Grasso's good defensive grappling. But overall, based on the takedown, based on the initiative, it's a 10-9 round to Shevchenko. A clear victory, but not a dominant one. Grasso had a good defense, she had a good offensive output, 10-9 round. The second round is the most definitive and obvious Grasso round in the fight. Both women are confident in their striking from the last round, so this one is, once again, staying on the feet. Again, it's a tentative jabbing match for the first minute, until Grasso lands a nasty combo that knocks Shevchenko off her feet, has her rolling around the canvas, and then she blitzes her and does some real damage in the clinch, with some knees to the body, some punches to the head. Shevchenko manages to escape and does end up scoring a takedown, which of course is what she always does against Grasso when she gets hurt. Although Grasso does even more damage to her from the bottom and lands a nasty upkick on the Bullet's jaw when she stands up. Shevchenko re-enters Grasso's guard without a takedown because she stays on the ground, and the round finishes with nothing really happening. 10-9 Grasso, 19-19 overall. The third round was all Shevchenko. Probably still hurt and probably still wobbly from round 2, or at the very least cautious of what another big shot could do to her, although of course she did survive well in the round and regain her initiative. Shevchenko very quickly shoots the takedown in this round, and out-grapples Grasso to lock in a guillotine. Grasso remains calm and defends it until Shevchenko's arms get tired, and she staves off the submission, although she does have to give up her back. Although Shevchenko is close at the end of the round to locking in an armbar, which would be counted as a submission attempt, she doesn't, leaving her with one submission attempt in the round. So clearly a 10-9 for Shevchenko, giving her a 29-28 score overall. The fourth round, I'll spend the longest on this because it's probably the most important round of the fight. It starts out in the typical fashion, with Shevchenko very slightly outstriking Grasso, eating her up with a jab, but it all changes almost exactly 2 minutes in, when Shevchenko tries a takedown attempt, which Grasso sprawls to defend and responds to by throwing 6 unanswered knees to Shevchenko's face and to the side of her head. The Bullet clearly doesn't like these shots because she tries to put her hand on the canvas to technically ground herself and make the shots illegal and get the referee to stop the fight, although her hand had no weight on it and the strikes were legal. Grasso then hits her with some big shots to the body and to the head in the clinch, and dumps her on the canvas. That's a takedown. She makes a grappling mistake though and loses her position, but gets back to her feet. While she's escaping, Shevchenko lands her only really big shot of the night, apart from basically just jabs, which is an elbow that cuts Grasso open beside the eye. They exchange on the feet, with Grasso landing the slightly bigger shots, and Shevchenko gets a takedown, and Grasso finishes the round with a Tony Ferguson roll that leads to an attempted ankle lock submission, although Shevchenko is able to ride it out to the end of the round. I scored this 10-9 Grasso. 2 judges scored at 10-9 Shevchenko. Of course, they don't have access to, slow replay like I do. They're not watching it on the screen. They don't have, strike counts, whatever. So, of course, to them, maybe the knees don't look as impactful. Maybe they're not seeing the knees really in the same way that we are. Whereas when Grasso's bleeding all over her face, you're like, well, that's the most impactful shot in the round. But in my opinion, the knees were bigger than the elbow. But even if they were equal to the elbow, and the takedowns were equal, then Grasso wins the round 10-9 on the submission attempt. The unified MMA rules prioritize immediate effect over cumulative effect, so a submission attempt is more impactful than slightly out-jabbing someone for the first 2 minutes of the round. We get to the final round, and the story of this one is pretty simple, right? Both fighters are exhausted. The first 3.5 minutes have Shevchenko slightly outstriking Grasso, same thing with the jab, but with a minute and a half left, she goes for a takedown attempt. Grasso digs deep, she reverses it, and ends up on top, on Shevchenko's back, above her, and locks in 2 submission attempts. First, a rear naked choke from the top, and then a neck crank from the back after Shevchenko tries to roll to escape some ground and pound Grasso was doing to her head from her back. This one was a pretty clear 10-9 round to Grasso, leaving the fight total at 48-47 for the champion. A 10-8 round, according to the unified rule set, occurs when there's no offensive output, or almost no offensive output from one fighter, and although Shevchenko's output was light, it was there for most of the round. But either way, a correct scorecard would have Alexa Grasso winning the fight 48-47. So here we get to our next big problem, right? Not only did one judge, Saul D'Amato, score the fight for Shevchenko, which he shouldn't have. He should not have scored the 4th round for her, Shevchenko. One judge, Mike Bell, scored the fight a draw. On the surface, it looks like the Bullet was robbed, because if that final 5th round was scored 10-9 instead of 10-8, you'd be left with 2 48-47 scores to Shevchenko, and the belt would be around her waist, but instead, you get a draw, leaving the belt with the champion. However, the scoring was just so egregious from Bell and D'Amato that what on the surface looks like a robbery from one fighter is actually a robbery from the other, because neither judge should have scored the 4th round 10-9 Shevchenko. It should have been 10-9 to Grasso. So now we get to the title of the video, right? Dana White wants a trilogy, and all I have to ask is why? Right? Like, let's just start with some simple math here. The official record is now 1 win for Alexa Grasso and 1 draw. Like, numerically, you could say that's like 1.5 to 0.5. So what if Val wins the 3rd fight? I don't think she will, but what if she does? Like, now the scores are even. Do you do a quadrilogy to settle it once and for all, make the entire flyweight division pause and eat itself while the belt remains between 2 people? I understand giving a dominant champion like Valentina Shevchenko, the greatest flyweight of all time, a rematch after she lost the belt in the last fight. But that's not a rematch to beat Grasso. It's a rematch to win the belt back. She tried and failed to do that. It was a draw, officially. Right? After 2 fights, Grasso has the winning record over her. And this fight didn't look optically great for Shevchenko anyways, right? Maybe it works for points, but when you're scoring those points by jabs and takedowns, and your opponent is scoring through like knockdowns, submission attempts, and strikes that make you try and Aljamain Sterling your way to a belt, and try and get the ref to stop it because you don't like the knees, I don't think that the draw should win you a rematch, especially because if the UFC is going to act like anybody won this fight, they should be acting like Grasso won this fight. Because if you watch this fight objectively, and you score it objectively, without thinking about that 10-8, without thinking about how much money you bet in your parlay for Shevchenko to win, Grasso won that fight 48-47 based on 10-9s in rounds 2, 4, and 5. And it's actually kind of sad that the UFC is holding up the flyweight division like this, right? Because it's super exciting right now. At the top, there's the grappling expert Erin Blanchfield, the woman who totally fraud-checked Meatball Molly, tore through top contender Tyler Santos. There's Manon Fiorot, a brilliant French karate kickboxer who most recently dispatched one of the greatest women in the history of the sport. And there are other exciting prospects like one fight away from title contention, like Macy Barber, who fought Grasso before and gave her an absolute dogfight before narrowly losing, or Tracy Cortez on an 11-fight win streak. You could even give the strawweight champion Zhang Wei Li a chance to become double champ by fighting Grasso at UFC 300, right? These are all compelling fights and all people who already deserve a shot or will deserve a shot very soon. But if you delay the division by making them fight one more time, or even two more times, which you might have to if you're being fair, they're going to knock each other out of contention, and you're going to get another dry spell with no serious contenders, like Israel Adesanya inflicted on middleweight before Alex Pereira arrived, or like Amanda Nunes inflicted on bantamweight. And obviously that's not the fault of either fighters. I love Alexa Grasso. I really like Valentina Shevchenko. They're both fantastic fighters. I love watching their fights together. And I'm not saying Shevchenko should never fight Grasso again. I'm just saying give her a contender. Let Grasso defend someone new and have a title reign in earnest, because Lord knows she's earned it.